Pioneer brand canola with Optimum Gly, the highest yielding glyphosate-tolerant trait on the market. What's next in canola happens here.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host for today, Lyndsey Smith, because, of course, it is Tuesday, October 15th. So, of course, I would be your host. But there's a twist to today's episode. Of course, yesterday, was Canadian Thanksgiving. For all our American friends, that's right, we Canadians like to have our Thanksgiving before the snow flies, and being as northern as we are, that means October. So I hope all of you are full of turkey and stuffing and ham and potatoes, and had a wonderful time with family, and took a moment to think about what you are thankful and grateful for. We had a wonderful weekend as well. We harvested the soybeans. Our neighbor harvested our soybeans in our back field, and that was not just exciting for my 7-year-old who said it was her favorite day ever, because it's pretty cool to have a combine roll in and take the beans off. But we are, of course, sheep farmers, and one of the things we did this year for the first time is in early September, we droned on some cereal rye seed. The beans were very green. We just had a bit of leaf color change at the very bottom of the crop, and we had Valley Bio come in and drone on some seed, and it caught very well. It rained right after, but then September was hot and dry. Little concerned about how well the rye would do, but it did fantastic. It looks amazing. It didn't interfere with the combine. We were worried about that as well, and now we have a cover crop, a fall seeded crop, already up and rolling. Which is pretty exciting for middle of October, especially for the part of the world that I am in. Our plan for that, if you're curious, is to take it as feed, as forage, early next spring. We overwinter our sheep outside, and in the spring, we always get to that point where there's a sniff of green grass somewhere, and the sheep just don't want to stay where we have put them, and we sort of constantly fight with them to keep them in the bale grazing, bale unrolling area until we can get them moved to the solar where there's more green grass. And so our plan is, if we need to graze this, or if we have a chance to graze this in the spring, we will, but we will take it for feed. And so that's the plan. That's what we're going to do. So I will keep you posted. If you got any questions about that, you can zip them to me, lsmith@realagriculture.com, or find me on social media. On today's show, we are going to talk a little bit more about this, because being a Muse Day, that's right, a Tuesday that's kind of a Monday, we are going to do Agronomy Tuesday on today's show. And so Peter Wee Johnson is going to join me for today, and I do want to talk to him about droning on crops, of course, and some of the things we need to think about or what we can expect. So that is on the docket. We're also going to talk about fall weed control, because that's a big one, and any questions about really a first frost or first major frost on crops that are still out there. So, of course, the corn crop, the soybean crop. We are going to touch on tar spot just a little bit, because we did hear last week where we did have North Dakota confirm that tar spot has been found in North Dakota. So that is an indication that tar spot in corn is on the move and potentially moving its way in the west, which may, of course, creep north into Manitoba and into the corn growing areas there. So something to stick around for and hear that conversation. We also have a product spotlight on today's show. That's with Genesis Fertilizers, so hang around for that as well. Now, I wanted to take a couple minutes here in the open of today's show to cover a few of the important news stories that we're following. We'll be doing more on these, of course, at RealAgriculture.com, on our podcast feed, on our YouTube channel, across social media, so check that out. But We did get word today that StatsCan released the latest inflation figure for September, 1.9, everybody, below 2%. So 2%, to remind everyone, that's that sort of magical number that the economy is ticking along where economists sort of want it to be. More than that is perhaps inflationary. Less than that, though, and as it trickles below that, we run into recession territory. So that's not good either. What does a lower than 2% inflation rate really mean? I mean, ultimately, it's only 1 month, so we'll continue to monitor that. At the same time, the Bank of Canada, of course, will be announcing an interest rate cut potentially. I'm not going to say they are going to cut, but I think chances are good that they will in just, I think it's 10 days. We're looking at just later in October. So does this mean for sure a cut is locked in? Probably. Does it mean it might be a larger than a 25 basis point cut? We did see the U.S. Fed announced their half-point cut, which people thought was a little aggressive. Will Canada get more aggressive? Potentially. So we will be monitoring that, of course. And if you are one of those people that has any variable rate loans, or if you're like me and have to renew a mortgage soon, this is potentially really good news, depending on what the Bank of Canada does with interest rates. So there you go. Now, is it bad news? Well, if it continues to tick lower and we get into recession territory, that, of course, has bigger ramifications for the economy writ large. Speaking of, one of the huge stories that we'll be covering from an agricultural angle, of course, is the news that Canada has turfed out 6 Indian diplomats. India responded in kind and has turfed out 6 Canadian diplomats from India. All these diplomats have a week. Well, actually, I think the 19th, so 5 days to get out of the country. This, of course, all stems from the RCMP are investigating several different crimes in Canada that they say they have credible evidence that they link to not just people from India, but actually the government of India is implicated in some of these, including the murder that we covered a little while ago. And so the key here is this is definitely an escalation in the investigation into India's government's interference in Canada. Now, this is different, of course, than the Chinese side of political interference, where that is on the, MPs and election side. This is very much the implication of the government of India or representatives of the government of India taking part in murder, in extortion, in all sorts of crimes within Canada. Now, of note, and I think this is important, this is the RCMP that have had this announcement that are taking the lead on this. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was asked about it yesterday. He would not comment. So unlike a year ago where it was Justin Trudeau, our Prime Minister, who came out and said, we're implicating India in this, this is coming from our law enforcement, coming from the RCMP. But it is also different from how the U.S. system deals with these things. So the U.S. has also brought charges forward, as has Canada, but India views it slightly differently in between how we're dealing with this. And so India is not happy with how Canada is handling this, and it has led to even more strained tensions with India. Why does that matter so much? Well, India is a gigantic economy, buys a lot of things from Canada, and of course on the agriculture side, most notably buys a lot of pulses. And right now, peas going into India actually are tariff-free, and this is a huge market for our Saskatchewan pulse growers, our Alberta pulse growers as well. So definitely something we'll be keeping tabs on. Check out RealAgriculture.com. We'll definitely be talking about it on the Issues panel on Friday. All right, let's jump to a break, and I'll be back with Peter Wheatbeef Johnson right after this on RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM.
Get ready for tillage season with the high-speed disc from Brandt. Cut and size residue, create ideal seed beds, and level ruts faster than any other tillage machine. It's a better field finish and fewer passes, so you can stay on schedule no matter what fall throws at you. And right now you can get yours with a $12,000 rebate. There's never been a better time to bring your operation up to speed. Visit Brandt.ca for details.
Joining me now is Courtney Stevenson, Portfolio Manager with New Farm. What could farmers be doing this fall to get ahead of next spring?
It's important to start thinking about applying a soil active herbicide so that they can get ahead of their weeds for the next spring. One of the nice things about applying in the fall is that Beer Easy and Volterra Easy are activated by moisture. It's a great way to use snow to your advantage. The snowpack will activate these products. It's a little bit nicer in that you don't have to incorporate. You can just apply them with your sprayer. One of the things that is also a benefit by applying in the fall, a grower has 8 weeks of activity in the spring. You're going to be preserving your moisture and fertility in the spring by controlling your weeds at that time.
Is there such thing as too early or too late?
You need to apply these products when the soil temperature is 10 degrees Celsius or lower. The first best stop would be to talk to your local retailer, or you can always go to newfarm.ca/fall apply.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on this Tuesday, October 15th. This segment is brought to you by Genesis Fertilizers. Nitrogen fertilizer is your farm's number one expense. Farmers are working together through Genesis Fertilizers to solve the problem of high prices and security of supply by planning a state-of-the-art nitrogen plant. Security and earnings through ownership is the solution. Visit Genesis today at genesisfertilizers.com to learn more. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and joining me now, oh my goodness, it's Peter Johnson. We get to do an Agronomy Monday on a Tuesday, which makes it an Agronomy Muse Day. Welcome here.
Okay, whatever you say, Lyndsey. Any day we get to do agronomy is an awesome day in my book, so this is great.
Mm-hmm. It is pretty great. Sean hogs the Monday show, so now I get to do agronomy on Tuesday. So it's all good. Okay, let's start with, there's a lot of things happening, of course. I will say here, rounding up the Thanksgiving weekend, a literal boatload of beans probably came off in the area. And tip of the hat to Wheat Pete, all the drills were following those combines. There was a lot of drills running. How proud are you that we are getting wheat in the ground?
Lyndsey, it's awesome. I mean, it's October. It would have been nice if we could have moved that back into September. But regardless, wheat in the ground is just great for soil health. It's just one of those things that we need to keep doing. So when I see a drill chasing the combine out of the field, that just warms my heart. That is a bang on thing to do. By the way, in my part of the world, Lyndsey, down here in southwestern Ontario, it rained on Saturday night into Sunday. And so things really did grind to a halt on Sunday so people could, go have their Thanksgiving meal. We did get almost too much rain in some areas, so up to 1.25 inches on some of the Glencoe clays that have suffered all year from too much rainfall, and it still seems to be the case there. So they're maybe having a bit of a challenge, but most of the area just got light showers, kind of a 1/4 inch at most, and people are going to be back in the field hard today. There's no question about that.
Mm-hmm. Now, a few things on this. It is, as you mentioned, middle of October. Would have been nice to get some wheat in the ground maybe 2-3 weeks ago, but that does depend on, of course, what crop came off, etc. Where do you think early indications we might land for the 2025 acreage?
Yeah, so Lyndsey, I am astounded because earlier on there was some agronomists telling me, "Oh, Pete, the wheat crop didn't do quite as well as growers thought it was going to do." Because if you recall, we had amazing growth. Right? The biomass, many growers saying straw yields 30, 40, 50% above average. The wheat yield was just sort of average or a bit better. The provincial average actually came in at almost a record, 99.5 bushels per acre. Our record is 99.7. So not everybody was that disappointed, but people just thought because of the biomass that they were going to have record yields, and they didn't quite get there. And anytime you have high expectations and you don't quite get there, that's a disappointment. So I had agronomists saying, I don't think we're going to hit it, Pete. And then we get this gorgeous fall, baby, like just incredible, almost too dry. In fact, too dry for the winter canola for sure, because struggling to get some of that to come out of the ground. But what that means is that it's ideal conditions for wheat planting. And one thing about Ontario farmers, if they can plant wheat into good conditions, even into mid-October, they know it can work. And Lambton County, Essex County, those heavy clays where wheat doesn't always get in because the soil's too wet in the fall, they have gone to the field to the point where some companies are totally sold out of wheat seed. I talked to one grower in Essex. He went to get an extra tote to finish the field. No, couldn't get it. The supplier was out of seed. And so when Lambton and Essex, Lambton in particular is a massive wheat county, when they go to the field, I don't know, we might well have a record yield, or wheat acreage rather, record wheat acreage in the province of Ontario. I'm not quite predicting that, Lyndsey, but it's definitely going to be big, way bigger than what the original indications were, baby.
Yeah, I'm marking it down as you're saying that you are saying that it's going to be a record acreage for 2025. We'll give her a go. We'll check in the spring. We'll see how we did on that one. If we get a good spring, though, you never know. Okay, so it does bring up a few things on, as you mentioned, of course, getting the drill in right after the combine. We'd like to go earlier. We know that there are a lot of things that we can do to manage this wheat crop to get it to top yield, but that early planting date really is such a huge driver of the yield potential. What is the difference a week makes in, let's say, late September as far as growth?
Oh, so if you think about, if you recall, Lyndsey, what was the weather like in late September?
It was summer still.
It was summer.
Yes.
Thank you. It was summer. It was gorgeous. Like I want those temperatures back. I mean, it's cold this morning. Dang, furnace is running like, so, even this afternoon when it's warm, it's still not warm like it was. That week makes such a difference. So I was trying to chase my combine, but I'm a little bit manpower limited. So my son was driving, Jeremy was driving the combine, and I would have to unhook off the drill, hook on the wagons, haul the soybeans, bring the wagons back. And so I couldn't quite keep up. And I got some wheat planted on the 21st and 22nd of September when he was combining. And then we got rained out, and I didn't finish until September 29th and September 30th. The September 21st wheat is already got 2 tillers. Wow. It's got 4 leaves, and you can see those 2 tillers coming. Now, they aren't to the stage where they have 3 leaves each. Right. And that's sort of the stage that we think that we want them going into the winter. But it's only mid-October. Yeah. The stuff that I planted 29th and 30th of September, it's just emerging. It's 1 leaf. It's 2 leaves. So it's 2 tillers behind because of 1 week. And if you think about yield potential, every one of those tillers is a head. Mm-hmm. So that 1 seed I put in the ground on September 21st is now got the potential of 3 heads versus the stuff on September 30th has 1 head. So effectively, that's 3 times the yield potential. Now, we haven't finished growth yet, and we can tiller in the spring, and I sure as heck hope, because I didn't get nearly enough acres planted on the 21st, 22nd. I hope that it doesn't yield 3 times what my September 30th wheat does. But when you ask me the impact of that 1 week, a day in September is worth at least 3 days in October in terms of the impact of planting date. And we often don't think about that. It's like, oh yeah, it's September, so we don't need to be in a rush. Be in a rush, dang it. Like, be in a way bigger rush in September than you are in late October. Because in late October, it could take a whole week to equal 1 day in September. And I mean, a lot of growers have that figured out, but we still need to hammer that message home.
Mm-hmm. All right. Now, that brings me to my next point, because we are here at Shady Creek Lamb Co. one of those enterprising farmers that got some seed droned on to standing soybeans, because, of course, the soybeans at our place only got harvested this weekend. So if we were those that were trying to get a fall seeded crop in, we'd be putting it in this weekend. That's October 15th. We droned on rye, cereal rye, the first, I think it was the 7th or 8th of September. It was early. We were just getting yellowing on the bottom leaves of the soybeans. That rye looks phenomenal. It's in at least, like, it's like at least 3 leaf plus a tiller, like it's going gangbusters. That now, it's just established. I'm not saying it's perfect. There were concerns about it interfering with the combine or the soybean harvest, etc. But we can visit that. But I do want to touch on with wheat. There are obviously other considerations with droning on wheat, but could that be one of the solutions to getting the wheat on earlier, or what do we have to consider?
So there's two things about, droning your cereal rye on for forage, or broadcasting it on if you have tram lines because you've applied fungicides with a spinner spreader or something like that. This is an awesome way to get that crop in early, because you want that for forage. Yeah. Man, the earlier you can get it on, the more growth you can get in the fall, the more forage you are going to harvest next spring. Yeah. So it's a huge win, right? So your sheep, Lyndsey, they're going to have so much grass to eat next spring there, and they're not going to know what to do with it all. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Make milk, and those lambs will just grow like crazy.
Let's hope.
But with wheat, it's a little different when we're taking it for grain. And the reason that is because we really are concerned about bunt diseases. And bunt diseases, common bunt comes on the seed, and we can control it easily with seed treatments. Dwarf bunt is soil-borne, and so it's like you have to have particular seed treatments to control dwarf bunt. But as soon as I go to the field and I drone on or I broadcast in treated wheat seed, if I get treated wheat seed into the soybeans, that's an all bad scenario. There are growers who do that, but they have their own elevators, and they know if that happens, and it doesn't always happen, but if it happens, you have to clean out the treated wheat seed, and you can clean it out. But man, then you are also cleaning out some broken soybeans. There is some yield impact. It doesn't come for free. The other side is I broadcast untreated wheat seed, and I've had this question a lot this fall. So Pete, what are the risks of untreated wheat seed? And if you're in the dwarf bunt area, so the snow belt area, man, there's no way to avoid dwarf bunt if we have a dwarf bunt year. So it's a huge risk. If you get dwarf bunt, it's 100% yield loss. So that's massive risk. If you're not in the snow belt areas, though, and you have wheat seed that was grown from well-treated seed, remember that common bunt is seed-borne, so in order to have it, it has to be on the seed. If you grew your seed from really well-treated seed, there shouldn't be any common bunt in that field. And so if the seed has none, you can get away with spreading untreated wheat seed. There's a risk there, yeah. But that's sort of the risk from a wheat perspective that is different than your risk from the cereal rye perspective. And then, of course, we get into the other risks about it laying on the soil surface and what can happen from slugs, from frost heave. Like there's a whole range of things there that we haven't talked about yet that are still issues. But just the difference in the cereal rye for forage versus wheat really is the disease side of things.
Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. We're going to park it there for a moment. We're going to take a break. I've actually got a product spotlight coming up after the segment, but Pete will join me back in segment 4. So stick around. We'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this. Ready to take your oat game to the next level? Try CDC Endure from Alliance Seed. CDC Endure oats are consistently one of the top yielding varieties in the Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta provincial yield trials. With strong standability, excellent disease resistance, and excellent end-use quality, CDC Endure might be the variety for you and your farm. Available from authorized Alliance Seed retailers. For more information, visit allianceseed.com. Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Sean Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on SiriusXM, featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at realagriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your on location with RealAg Radio today.
There's a reason we call it the Corn School. Videos on everything from planter setup to weed control, field trial results, and the latest yield strategies. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast in your favorite podcast app. Check out the latest Corn School episode today.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. It's now time for a product spotlight with Genesis Fertilizers, and we're talking to Barrie Mann. Barrie, how's it going today?
Hey, I'm doing great, Sean. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fantastic. So, Barrie, we've got this Future of Fertilizer tour. Okay, so what can farmers expect from this tour if they attend some of the town hall events you're holding?
Yeah, it's probably our biggest tour yet. We've had, the sporadic town hall meetings here or there, but this is a dedicated tour. We're going to hit over 20 locations. And the reasoning for it is that the project has made significant advancements, right? So farmers have heard about this for a few years. Quite a number of course, are already involved, and they get, more direct updates. But the substantial progress made now that we're moving into the full engineering. We signed a lot of deals with various partners around the world that supply equipment. We're moving to a low carbon option. There's just a lot of things going on with the project. And we think the best way to articulate that to the farmers en masse is to hold a significant number of events throughout the prairies. And we're even going to be in northeast BC. So we're going to cover the ground, and we're really going to have a detailed presentations, lots of questions hopefully are going to be asked, and we're going to be able to really provide farmers with the project status. And I think a lot of them are just going to be pretty maybe surprised and glad at where the project is sitting today.
Yeah, you've made some advancements. There's some rubber hitting the road, so to speak, when it comes to the progress here.
Yeah, it's, one thing we've learned, as we're a startup company, basically farmer owned, and we haven't built a plant before, right? And we haven't seen one built in 35 years in Western Canada. So, we're kind of, I'm not saying we had to learn as we go, because we did understand, the task ahead of us. But as you get into a mega petrochemical project like this, and you learn the steps that you have to take to be extremely dedicated to the format that these big engineering companies use and construction companies to take a project from concept to operation. You've got to follow those steps. And we've been doing that. And I think that's what the farmers are going to see, because they all ask, well, gee, how come it's taking so long? Well,
yeah, there's reasons for that.
It takes that long because if you can't make a false move, because the plant's got to be built right, and it's got to operate, and you don't want to make a mistake because it's costly to make a mistake.
A little bit more complicated than putting up that new farm shop, indeed. Okay,
slightly.
Slightly, exactly. Understatement, indeed. So, why is now the right time for farmers to get involved with Genesis Fertilizers, and how will that Future of Fertilizer tour help inform them to make the decision whether or not they want to be involved or not?
Right. So I think, there's been a significant number of farmers that jumped on right away, right? And again, continue to jump on board because they see those benefits. In terms of the right time now, I think for those farmers that were maybe just not really sure, can this go or not? What are the particulars of it? I think it's really going to give them the background where they can make that decision. And the right time is now. And, there is no other time. This is a one-time project. That's once in a multi-generational project that's coming along. And if you don't take that step today and get involved and vertically integrate your farm fertilizer, the side of your business, pretty well for the rest of that farmer's life or that farm's operation, you're going to be stuck with the status quo, Sean. And what we say to guys is, how's that working for you today? We've got stubborn high prices today still. Grain prices have dropped. Natural gas prices have dropped. But fertilizer is not dropping. And those margins continue to increase. So if you don't vertically integrate, basically forever, you're going to be stuck with these market forces that really aren't in favor of the farmer. And it's time to make that move. And it's now. We're well on our way with the engineering, with the plant design. And I think that's what this tour is really going to show people and farms in general, that this is, it's real. Just like RealAg, this is real. This is real fertilizer.
I like that. There you go. Okay, if somebody wants more information about the Future Fertilizer Tour or how to get involved with Genesis Fertilizers, where do they find the information, Barrie? Where do they go?
Here, just go to the website, genesisfertilizer.com, and it's / future. It's pretty easy to find. You can also click on the events tab. And we have a nice little, there's a nice way you can just click on which event you want to attend, enter your name and information and so forth. We will have limited space available at some locations, so it's important to book in early.
Yeah, great stuff. Hey, Barrie, good luck with Future Fertilizer Tour. It's great chatting with you again, and fantastic to hear there's progress in this project. We'll talk to you again soon.
Great. Thanks, Sean. Appreciate the help.
That is Barrie Mann with Genesis Fertilizers. Again, that website is genesisfertilizers.com. We'll be back with more of RealAg Radio right after this.
Making the most efficient use of your dollars spent on crop nutrition is a constant goal of all farmers. We recognize this hurdle as you prepare for another growing season. It's challenging to balance economics over ever-changing environmental conditions. Alpine developed the Maximizing Fertilizer Efficiency Program to solve this yearly dilemma. The program's goal is to reduce risk from variable weather conditions by managing the nutritional requirements for your crop in a timely manner. To learn more, visit alpinepfl.com today.
What were the issues in your fields this year? Did you do a soil sample? What is your soil sample telling you about some of the nutrient issues that you might be having going into next year? What herbicides did you use? What residues you might be concerned about? What weed issues did you have? What crop residues did you have? How well do you know your fields?
Get the answers to all the questions you have about your pulse crop at the Pulse School on RealAgriculture.com. Welcome back to Real Ag Radio here on this Tuesday, October 15th. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and this segment is brought to you by CDC Envy CWRS. With impressive yields, early maturity, outstanding standability, and a robust disease package, with CDC Envy, your wheat crop will be the talk of the town. Learn more at allianceseed.com or call 1-877-279-2890. And a man who does love a new wheat variety is Wheat Pete. And so here we are, Peter Johnson, joining me for this Agronomy Tuesday. Thank you to our Thanksgiving Monday. I love Thanksgiving, and I am full of turkey and stuffing, and it is amazing. Pete, how was your Thanksgiving? We haven't talked about that.
Oh, Thanksgiving was fairly quiet for us because a lot of our family was in the Netherlands actually for Thanksgiving and in France. So they took a week off. We have a granddaughter who is going to school in the Netherlands for this semester. And so her parents said, man, she's there. We're visiting.
That is a great idea.
So it was just Sheila and I, and we had a very nice, quiet Thanksgiving. And we're in the process of moving residences. So it was also fairly busy, as well as Wheat Pete trying to plant wheat on Saturday.
Right.
There's just things. There's a lot going Thanksgiving, but there's a lot going on. Exactly. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Absolutely.
No lamb chops for me, though.
Okay. Well, I promised I would bring you some. So next time I see you, I will bring you some. All right. Okay. So I have a rule in my house. The furnace should not go on until Thanksgiving. Now, I did not have this rule when I lived in Winnipeg because that's just cruel. But having moved to Ontario, where we do get a beautiful autumn, that is usually my rule. And I just tell everybody, put on sweaters, put on wool socks, and just tough it out till Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is a little late this year. I'll give you that. But while I was in Calgary last week for our meetings, my partner and my children turned the furnace on. So they conspired against me. But it has been cold here in Ontario. We had a frost, this morning, a few mornings ago as well, depending on where you are, how many frosts and how bad. What impact has this had? First, let's start with the crop and then we'll talk about the weeds. But late corn, are we worried? What about double crop? Beans, etc.?
Absolutely on the late corn. And what's interesting is most of the late corn was planted further south. So kind of in the Elgin, Middlesex, Lambton, down through Essex. That was the area that got hit the most. And so those temperatures, from what I can tell so far, have not hit -2 Celsius. So to kill corn, it takes -2 Celsius for at least 2 hours and maybe even 3 or 4 hours. And up until at least this morning, the late corn has been handling the light frost we've been getting just super well. And that's because it's still a fair piece from maturity. And one of the interesting things about crops, Lyndsey, is that as they approach maturity, they lose their tolerance to both diseases and also to low temperatures. So the double crop beans that are in the field, and whether they're soybeans or they're edible beans, and what I find interesting is we always used to talk double crop soybeans. Man, there are a lot of people now who are growing double crop edible beans, and even some people talking about double crop oats coming off as a grain crop. So that's kind of cool. But boy, the double crop beans, they got hit hard by the frost on October 11th, at least any that I have driven past. But part of that is because they were already starting to yellow up just a little bit. So they'd really lost that frost tolerance. We typically talk about soybeans needing that -2 as well, or at least -1.5. They're maybe not quite as tough as corn in the late season, but they're close. Man, those leaves, at least the top leaves, are all gone. That'll just hurry them along to maturity. The other thing, though, about double crop soybeans, Lyndsey, that I find astounding is the stuff that got planted right the first part of July. So those crops that came off, and man, the good growers that are double cropping, they've learned this. We talked about planting wheat chasing the combine. Man, planting double crop soybeans chasing the wheat combine out of the field. The difference between July the 6th, let's say, and July the 12th is about twice the height. I've been scouting some double crop soybeans. The stuff that was planted July 12th to July the 15th is maybe a foot or 15 inches tall at the most. They have some pods, but oh my gosh, the pods are right on the ground. They're going to be a nightmare to harvest. The stuff on July the 6th, it looks totally different. It almost looks like a real soybean crop. It's short, but it's sort of knee high, and there's pods, and they're not potted as close to the ground. The difference in that, in that week, once again, right? The difference in a week in planting date can be huge.
So I will say, now that's for a double crop, but the same goes for the last week of June, because that's when a lot of beans went in the Ottawa Valley, and they averaged an average amount. So just add 1 week back from that, right? If you're into late June, it's that much different. So you're not going to break any records here with a late June planted soybean, but you can still get a decent crop out of that. So that's just, 1 week sooner or 10 days sooner.
So Lyndsey, what's really interesting is here in the Southwest, I've talked to some growers who did what you're going to do, right? They harvested their rye and they planted soybeans, or even some growers that harvested hay.
Yep.
So now we're talking the first part of June, and the beans went in about mid-June. And those beans are yielding 60 bushels per acre. Like, they've given up almost nothing. The really good beans are 70 or 80, but still, to get 60 bushel beans after a hay crop, are you kidding me? So the yields on those double crops this year, and it's because we had lots of moisture. It doesn't work if you don't get moisture. We had lots of moisture. Those early planted double crop beans are quite outstanding.
Well, and we also got that heat in September, which I know for around here, those late beans, it really, there were big differences in maturity going into September. By the end of September, everything had sort of shortened up within a couple days. So thus, everybody was so busy this past weekend because everything kind of matured at once. They were still a bit chewy. I won't lie. There'll be some air going on, but that's okay. Better to get them out of the fields before all this rain that we're getting and all this cold. Okay, so you have talked about it. I want to touch on it just quickly on the word, everybody, Wednesday. So that's tomorrow. You have to do them, Pete. But every Wednesday we post Wheat Pete's Word. It's available on YouTube, podcast feed, or at RealAgriculture.com. You did talk about, of course, that corn that, the hammer went down at Black Layer, drying down really quickly. That is not for everywhere. So, for some places, we've still got some decent moisture in the corn for making that silage crop. But what say you? Do we need to be out and scouting?
Yeah, and the answer is absolutely, Lyndsey. So you're right. On the word, I kind of gave the dairy producers a bit of a kick in the butt, because if they want high moisture corn or corn cob meal in the silo, we have growers going to the field right now harvesting corn at 17% moisture. Maybe that can work in a sealed silo, but even in a sealed silo, that's getting pretty tough. Yeah. But I got tremendous pushback from some people saying, Johnson, you just get everybody all excited, and that's not the way it is in my part of the world. So for goodness sakes, Lyndsey, whether it's on radio, RealAg Radio, it's on Wheat Pete's Word, it's on Twitter, when Pete says something, the first thing you do is say, okay, wait a minute. Pete's here. I'm here. Does that really apply to me? And the answer isn't always yes, but the answer is go to the field and scout. Mm-hmm. And so absolutely get to the field and scout. When it comes to tar spot, we are having some massive implications. A lot of cornfields have lost the top part of the stalk entirely. The corn that did not get sprayed, the susceptible varieties grown north of London that did not get sprayed, and we had all that rainfall, all that humidity, they are the fields, for the most part, that are 17% moisture. The growers, from what we can tell, it's about a 35 bushel per acre yield hit, and that corn is already falling over. Right. So pay attention. Tar spot matters. And, tar spot isn't everywhere yet, but we have found it in Eastern Ontario, in Quebec, and it's ramping up. And once you have it, then it's unfortunately at least in Southwestern Ontario, because we have so much humidity here, and tar spot needs 7 hours of leaf wetness for infection. I really think it's something we're going to have to fight over the long term. It's not a soybean rust. We thought soybean rust was going to be a big deal. It's never made it here, and I hope it never does. Tar spot is here, and it's here with a vengeance.
Well, and a not good news for our Western friends either. It was confirmed in North Dakota last week. That news went out as well. So now, as you mentioned, humidity is key, so that may limit potentially where it ends up spreading to or thriving. But definitely on the radar as well as those corn growing regions as it creeps closer to the west.
What's really interesting, Lyndsey, is that the late planted corn, the June planted corn, has almost no tar spot. Mm. And you go, how come is that? Well, it's because once we got past August, September, and even late August, super dry, no 7 hours of leaf wetness. And so all this late planted corn has escaped most of the tar spot, and good. I'm glad, but weather does matter, and so tar spot won't hit even here every year. But man, it's something that we definitely have to have on the radar screen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And Manitoba, look out! If it's in North Dakota, it's only a matter of time, because Manitoba also can have a fair bit of humidity.
Yes, it can. It's not like it's Calgary, and southern Alberta, where there is no humidity. It's just wind drying you out from, okay. All right. Let's take a quick break. And Pete, if you will, we'll do one more segment. We'll round out the show. I do have a bit of news to probably tackle at the end of the show. It's been busy. But we'll take a quick break and we'll be back with more RealAg Radio right after this.
Advanced canola trait technology is here. And it's soon to be the talk of the town. Optimum Gly delivers excellent yield potential and agronomic trait performance. Improved crop safety. Enhanced weed control. And a wider window of application. You're going to want to see this. Learn more at OptimumGly.ca.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
Welcome back to Real Ag Radio. I am your host, Lyndsey Smith, and this segment is brought to you by Pioneer Brand Canola with Optimum Gly, the highest yielding glyphosate-tolerant trait on the market. What's next in canola happens here. All right, joining me for the last segment of the day is Peter WheatPete Johnson out of somewhere in Southern Ontario, and trying to stay warm with sweaters and socks and fleecies. And yes, so we did promise, talking about cold weather, talking about the fall, what impact this may have on our plans for fall weed control. So let's touch on that. Is it too late? Is the window just beginning? What do I need to know?
So it's not too late. And no, the window isn't just beginning, because fall weed control can happen pretty much anytime in the fall. And in fact, with some weeds, like things like bindweed, I would prefer to have it done in September, because bindweed goes dormant in late September. So spraying bindweed now, you've probably missed the window. But if you're looking at fall weed control, I find it phenomenally interesting how things work. So if you look at things like Canada fleabane in winter wheat, so we know I have glyphosate-resistant Canada fleabane. And so if we're going to control that, a lot of growers now are looking to do it post-emerge in the winter wheat crop. And we have some great fall herbicides that can do a super job of that. But I often get questions about, so why is fall weed control so important, or have such a positive impact? What's so interesting about things like Canada fleabane is that Peter Sickman's research, if I spray Canada fleabane in the fall with a product like Infinity FX, which is registered for fall weed control, there's other ones as well, but it does a good job, then I will only get probably 80% control on the Canada fleabane, because after I spray it in the fall, fleabane is an amazing weed. There's still going to be more plants germinate. There's going to be more plants germinate next spring. So I get 80% control. If I spray it in the spring, I get 100% control. And so everybody says, Johnson, you're insane. Why would I spray it in the fall? Well, guess what the data says? If I spray it in the fall, even though I didn't get quite as good weed control, I get yield increase. I get 7 to 10 bushels more wheat. If I spray it in the spring, I don't get any more wheat at all. And that's because of the critical period of that wheat crop is really in the early spring when it breaks dormancy. If I spray the fleabane now, there's no plants there that compete with the wheat crop next spring. Will there be a few that show up late? Maybe. But they don't hurt yield. Whereas if I don't spray it in the fall, I can't spray it in the spring when I need to because it's too cold. It just doesn't work. And now I lose yield. And so when we look at these cold temperatures, if I'm talking about hormone-type herbicides, I go back to the rule of 3. We use that in the spring. I think it works well in the fall. If you can get 3 days of nighttime temperatures at 3 degrees Celsius, which is about 37 Fahrenheit for those listeners in the U.S., 3 days of 37 or 3 Celsius overnight, the day before I spray, the day I spray, the day after I spray, as long as there's green leaf tissue, we still get really good weed control. Not as good weed control as if we had, 5 degrees or 10 degree nighttime temperatures. We have to be real, but we still get 89% weed control instead of getting 94% weed control. Is still really good. So it's not too late. If we're talking about things like I harvest my corn crop and I've got perennial sow thistle or Canada thistle out there, man, glyphosate works right down to nighttime temperatures of -4 Celsius. Again, does it work better if I can have 3 nights of 3? Absolutely. But green leaf tissue, you can still get weed control. And so with those fall perennials like the Canada thistle, like the perennial sow thistle, like wild carrot, some of those ones that we struggle with in the spring, so much better weed control because we're putting the root reserves or the photosynthetic products that we produce, we're feeding the roots now, right? So we put the herbicide into the roots as opposed to in the spring, we're feeding the growth, and it's so much harder to get the herbicide into the roots. So it's not too late, and it depends what product we're talking about. Mm-hmm. Post-emerge in winter wheat or in your cereal rye, Lyndsey, if you have a bunch of fleabane coming in your cereal rye, it really is that rule of 3, and I think that works super well. Can you push that? Yeah, you can probably push it a bit and still get some weed control. But if I can, that's what I'd like. With glyphosate, I will go colder, but just to have realistic expectations.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so know what product you're using. Know what weeds you're targeting. This is a key one. And also the prettier name for wild carrot. Is that Queen Anne's lace? Are they the same thing?
Yes, they are.
It was an incredible year for wild carrot this year. As in, it loved everything weather threw at it this year, and it was everywhere.
Yes.
And the sheep don't eat it, just so you know.
Goats, Lyndsey, goats.
Yeah, I can't have goats at the solar. They climb on things. Okay, what about, though, quickly while we're still on weed control, what about grassy weeds in my wheat?
Yeah, so that's the other thing that we're seeing a lot of show up. Annual ryegrass, rough stem bluegrass, annual bluegrass, which, by the way, is not an annual, but we're getting downy brome. And what happens with weeds is as we grow more of a crop, they adapt, right? And so we start to see an annual ryegrass. We brought it in as a cover crop species. Talk about shooting yourself in the head, because once it's in the field, it's a real problem. And I'm seeing more and more of it just show up. So if you are seeing grassy weeds in your wheat crop, spray them this fall. Simplicity Go Dry is one product. There are other products out there. They're escaping my brain right now. Sorry. But regardless, there are products you can spray in the fall to take out those grassy weeds. They work better in the fall than they do in the spring. Again, get that job done. Use the rule of 3 there as well.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, Pete, we're just about out of time. What are you going to cover on the Word tomorrow?
I don't know. There's always stuff to talk about. I'm going to talk about biomass and photosynthesis and a whole bunch of stuff on that. And I don't know. We will talk about other stuff because I always find stuff to talk about.
Well, and I was going to say we didn't have time today, but the phosphorus and potassium questions in the fall are always, there's so many of them. So we covered a lot of that on last week's Word. I'm sure we will hear more of that in the weeks coming up. And you know what? There are some evergreen topics, and I invite everyone to let Wheat Pete know what questions you have. Also on manure, we always get lots of questions about fall applied manure, different types, when do you work it in, etc. So yeah, check that out because Pete's got all the answers, or at least opinions.
Opinion. Pete has an opinion.
Pete has an opinion on what the answer is.
The answer can change based on new science.
That's right. And that's what we love about it. Because this is, how many years have you been doing this, the Word, for us? Because there was
So I will finish year 10 coming up this April.
That is amazing. I love that. Okay. We'll have to have a big party, Pete.
Yeehaw.
A Wheat Pete party.
Yes.
Yeehaw. Okay. All right. Pete, thanks so much for joining me here on RealAg Radio.
Oh, thanks for having me, Lyndsey. Have yourself a great day and a great week.
You too. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me here on RealAg Radio for this Tuesday, October 15th. Big thanks, of course, to Wheat Pete for joining me here for this Agronomy Muse Day, I suppose. And of course to Genesis Fertilizers for our product spotlight today. If you've got any feedback on today's show, 1-855-776-6147 is the number to call. Leave us a message, or you can do like many of you have done and zip me an email, lsmith@realagriculture.com. You can let me know if you've got feedback, tell me I'm wrong, tell me about something I haven't considered, or if you've got story ideas or think things that you think are important that you think we should be covering, please let us know. We'd love your feedback. I'm back for the Thursday show. Super excited. I get to host the Farmer Rapid Fire on Thursday, but tomorrow your regular host Sean Haney has a very special edition of RealAg Radio. It is World World Food Day, and we have an entire show devoted to that. That's tomorrow on Wednesday. And then I'll be back Thursday for the Rapid Fire, as I said, and Friday I'm hosting the Issues panel. So we'll be keeping track, of course, on all the major happenings this week, and we'll have Kelvin on with me, and of course a special guest to fill out the Friday show. So as always, do follow us across social media, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. We're there. Check it out. If you are listening, of course, you can always check out the video at YouTube or head on over to RealAgriculture.com. All right. Have a wonderful Tuesday. Have a great week. We'll talk to you again on Thursday. Cheers, everybody.